and I happen to finish early, I'm happy to go over stuff later. But I'm going to try to power through this class. We are recording this, so if anybody wants to see this presentation later, and hopefully the recording is going to turn out. I think I got all the audio going. For anybody who's online, hopefully you can hear me talking. If we have problems, I am going to leave my phone on. Normally I shut it off. I got one guy who's kind of monitoring this. Normally I sit here and I monitor. But I got somebody monitoring this, so he'll call me if I get questions. So I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to make sure the online participants are getting everything they need to get. This is the ASHI Heartland Chapter. This has been going for, well, rebooted about 3 years ago, and our membership is a little over 80 members now. We do meetings like this every month, except for 2 months out of the year. In the spring and the fall, we have all-day seminars. Most times we don't have these evening meetings. So for the evening meetings, it's basically 20 hours of CE. And then for the 2 all-day seminars, each one of those is another 8 hours. So by being a member of this chapter, you can get up to, 36 hours of CE. And it's only $100 to be a member of this chapter. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no better deal when it comes to CE and all that good stuff. I'm Reuben Saltzman. I'm the president of the chapter, and we've got, well, the other officers are not here this evening, so I can't introduce them. But that's that. This class that I'm teaching tonight is on water intrusion. The whole goal of this class is to teach you how to identify water intrusion on existing houses, doing home inspections, largely without having to do anything that'd be considered invasive. See if I can get my clicker working here. Oh, this is not going to be cool if this doesn't work.
It's just got awkward.
Yeah, it's just gotten really awkward. All right.
Awkward or
okay. Before I get into all this, Antonio was kind enough to come out today. Barry's here. A couple of guys in our company. They've been doing moisture testing for a long time. I want to thank them for a lot of the stuff that I've learned about moisture testing and finding water at houses. If you see Antonio putting his palm to his forehead and shaking his head, it means I'm giving you the wrong information. Same thing with Barry. And I might even kind of turn it over to these guys to help me answer some questions, because these are the guys who really know about invasive moisture testing and finding water in houses. Everything I'm teaching you today, I've learned from them, as well as Wayne Rademacher, another guy in my company. If you guys don't know Barry, Barry's the one who started Private Eye. He started doing moisture testing here in the Twin Cities back, I don't know what, 97, 98 is about when you started doing that?
About that.
Okay, yeah. He's been doing it for a very long time. I consider Barry the godfather of moisture testing stucco houses in the Twin Cities. And yeah, that's right. And then, so we got them. We got Mark Harley, if anybody knows him. He's a guy out of Iowa. He has taught at inspection roles for the last, I think, 3 years consecutively. His class is always very well attended. He is a moisture intrusion specialist type of guy. He works on construction defects. Not only does he identify them, but he fixes them. His classes are always very entertaining because he gets to rip walls open and show what went wrong and what it takes to fix stuff. We don't get to do that as home inspectors. But I've learned a lot from Mark Harley, and I've also learned a ton from Blaine Illingsworth, the late Blaine Illingsworth. He passed away a couple of years ago, lost a battle to cancer, but he was an ASHI member for a very long time. He taught a lot of fantastic classes on stucco, report writing, water intrusion, and he was always extremely generous with his time, his knowledge. I've learned a ton from him. So a lot of the stuff I'm sharing, I've gotten from Blaine Illingsworth too. He's a guy out of Philadelphia. So, it worked as soon as I didn't want it to. Perfect. So for this class, the goal of this class, the biggest thing I'm hoping everybody can take away from is to be able to look at a house from the street and know where you're going to have water intrusion. You're going to be able to see photos of houses before you ever show up to do your inspection, and you say, as soon as I get there, I'm going to have laser focus on that window right there because I know there's going to be water coming in. So it's going to be identifying where water's coming in, but then also taking the extra step to figure out if water really is coming in and if you have a problem. Because one of my biggest frustrations, I've attended so many different classes on building construction defects and flashing details, and this is done wrong, and here's how it should all be put together. And it's all wonderful going to a class, seeing how a window should be flashed, but we don't get to see any of that as home inspectors. All we get to see is what's on the surface. We don't get to take it apart. And so it's trying to bridge that gap between, I see this, I know that we have a high potential for water intrusion, and I know it's supposed to be done right, but what's in the middle? What do I recommend when I see stuff during the home inspection? And frequently, I'm recommending people rip walls open or do invasive testing to figure out how bad stuff really is. That's where a lot of these conclusions end up going to. But I'm helping you figure out how to get there, how you can be confident making these recommendations. Let's see if that matches what I got here. Yeah, and to get there, it's pushing, probing, using a moisture meter, doing these different things on walls and siding to try to figure out whether you definitely have a problem or not. And then the last part is I mentioned an invasive moisture inspection, what Barry and Antonio do. At the very end of this, I'll just kind of touch on that to show you guys what an invasive moisture inspection consists of, just in case there's some people in the room who aren't familiar with that. We'll end with that. Oh, okay. A lot of this is going to be about exceeding the ASHI standard of practice. If you follow the ASHI standard of practice and you consider that a ceiling, which I don't, I consider it a floor, but if you only follow the ASHI standard of practice, you're not required to do a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. When you look at the SOP, a home inspection says that you need to inspect the readily accessible, visually observable portions of a home. That's the basics. It's visual. You don't need to touch the house. You don't need to use a moisture meter. You don't need to push, probe, prod. You don't need to do any of that. It's bonus stuff. But the standard does say under section 2.3, it's not intended to limit the inspector from including other services, systems, and components that are listed in blah, blah, blah. So you can do more. The standards are a floor. What does the ASHI standard say about how we are to inspect the exterior? It's vague. It says the inspector shall inspect wall coverings, flashing, and trim. There, the end. That's what you're required to do. You inspect them. That's it. And then under general limitations and exclusions, it says right here, a home inspection is not technically exhaustive. And then I've got the definition of exhaustive listed here. Exhaustive is an investigation that involves dismantling, the extensive use of advanced techniques, measurements, instruments, such as a moisture meter. Using a moisture meter is considered technically exhaustive, according to the ASHI standard of practice. You don't have to do this, but a lot of us choose to do it. Testing, calculations, etc. So you don't have to do that. And then you're also not required to identify and report on concealed conditions, latent defects. And then the other interesting one, I had to actually look this up. I didn't even know what consequential damages were. Anybody familiar with that? Can you say my definition in your own words real briefly?
The definition of consequential?
Yeah, what's a consequence? I can't even say it. Consequential damage. All right, well, here's a definition I found. Otherwise known as special damages are damages that can be proven to have occurred because of the failure of one party to meet a contractual obligation. Like, well, if you had told me that I could have had water leaking into this window, then I would have done this. And I would have asked the seller to blah, blah, blah. Those would be consequential damages. We're not responsible for those
Or did it mean
per our SOP.
damages as a consequence of water getting into this one spot?
No, it's not that. No, it's special circumstances. So that's consequent. I'm not even going to keep saying it. Right. I can't pronounce that word. Okay, so it all starts at the top. We're looking where water comes down from the roof. That's where it all begins. That's my first focus. I'm thinking about the roof, protecting the walls. Here's a nice little diagram of some basic roof designs. Most of the houses that we inspect are going to have roofs that fall into one of these types of designs. It's probably going to either be a hip roof or a gable roof. That's most of what we look at. Those perform really well as long as you have a basic hip roof or a basic gable roof. Those are okay. but we change them. Here's a house that kind of matches some of those diagrams that I've got. A house like this, I really wouldn't be concerned about water intrusion. A house like this is going to perform very well. You've got nice big overhangs, big soffits, they stick out from the walls quite a ways, and these walls are probably never going to get wet. You end up with a dry wall that water never hits, it probably doesn't matter all that much how well these windows are flashed. If water never gets there, it doesn't make any difference. It's all about the overhangs. I'm a huge fan of big overhangs. There is a study that came out. I got this information from another class I attended at Instruction World, where the Canadian Research Council, National Research Council Canada, said that on a house with no overhangs, you're going to have 90% of those walls are going to experience water intrusion problems. 90% with no overhangs. And then jump all the way down to something with more than a 3-foot overhang, less than 25% of those walls will experience water intrusion problems. This is how big overhangs are. Now, they don't take into effect how many stories this house is, or if they do, I didn't glean that information from this study. But obviously, if it's a 1-story, great. Like this, the walls are never going to get wet. You start getting a little bit higher, and, well, the overhangs probably need to stick out a little bit more. Here's a nice picture. I found this on, was it Green Building Advisor? Good website, a lot of smart people writing on that site. Nice example of a house with gigantic rake edges. The only reason they did this was to help keep those walls dry. I'd feel good about this. Here's another version of the first house I showed you. The first one was a Rambler. This is a newer home. This was built in, I don't know, 2000, something like that. And we have pretty good overhangs here. It's not as good as a 1-story as far as protecting the walls, but you do have decent overhangs. I don't see any areas of this house where a lot of water gets concentrated. There's nothing I'd be especially concerned about here. This is pretty nice. This is the opposite of that. This is not a Minnesota house. This is one of the, I don't have a credit for this photo. I was just Googling for crazy roof lines. I should have looked up stupid roof lines. I'd be concerned about water intrusion everywhere at this house. I hate to inspect this house. You got a lot of water coming down this valley, hitting a wall, coming down here, terminating right here. You got this stupid thing you got to get water around. You got water coming down, splashing on this flat roof. There's a million places where I'd be concerned about water intrusion here. We do have our own version of these houses here in Minnesota, though, where you take a lot of water and you concentrate it in small areas. These are townhomes going up. This is a diagram I found in the Star Tribune of some new townhomes being built in Burnsville. And when you think about where all the water goes, and I'm going to go through a lot of these examples. They go from this peak over to this peak. Everything at the front half of this building ends up coming down into one single line right here. And it's going to come right here. It's going to splash against the wall. I'm going to be concerned about water intrusion at that wall. And this class really isn't about basement water intrusion, but I'd be concerned about basement water intrusion here too. All that water gets concentrated right by the front door. And I don't know if you guys remember John, I'm going to butcher his name, John Lamoureux, the guy from Advanced Waterproofing and Advanced Sandjacking. He's a basement water intrusion specialist. He spoke at our chapter a couple of times. He talked about how the worst area for water intrusion is always going to be the front stoop. That's the #1 spot for basement water problems. And that's also how we build all of our houses today now. And when I say all, I'm using a little license here, maybe 90% of them. Most of them are built where all the water from the roof gets concentrated right to the front door. We're really close to that. And that's all these examples I'm going to show you. It's all the same thing. Am I skipping slides? No, I always skip one. Okay. Here's a photo in the Star Tribune. It was on there the day I was putting this presentation together, so I stole this slide. They're saying the gable look presides over Minnesota houses, and it's true. This is what all houses seem to be built with. This is a simple hip roof. The water should be shed evenly over all the sides of the house, but then we add on all these triangles, all these gables, and now you're concentrating the water from this peak to this peak. It goes right down into one small area here, and then you got a little bit of water coming down here. Same thing here. This is a house in Eden Prairie. Peak to peak, it all comes right down here, comes right next to the house. I'm concerned about water intrusion at the basement. I'm concerned about water splashing against the house. I'm concerned about water, well, we got a little bit of an overhang here. It's a little bit protected, but still, it's the same thing. All that water gets concentrated right to one area. This is where I'm focusing my attention. I'd be concerned a little bit about this wall too. This window, there's very little overhang protection. I'd be focusing on that as well. I'd probably get up on that roof and take a look. At this one, this is about a 10-year-old house. You know where water is going to be leaking in here. It all gets concentrated in this valley, and then it hits that bottom wall. And you know, we could say, well, why does it leak? Let's open the wall up. How's the flashing? We don't do that for home inspections. So we're taking the macro look. Where do we want to focus our efforts? We focus them there. I'm not going to be peeling back the siding there. In this case, I'll go downstairs. I'll go down to the basement. It was an unfinished basement. And I went right to the rim area. I was lucky enough where I could get at it. It was all spray foam. So it kind of does a good job of hiding stuff. But after 10 years, it was advanced enough where it didn't matter that it was spray foam. I could still see that it was all nasty. I could take my awl and just kind of go right in the bottom of it. That was some nasty stuff. And it's all leaking in at the top. That's where this all begins. How is this not going to leak? Oops. This house is just a couple years old. What you're seeing this for a fact, but it looks like you used to have a roof line that came right down here. And I went in the living room, and because it was a finished basement, I couldn't see anything there. I pulled the carpet back to see the subfloor. Subfloor was all stained, but it was bone dry. So I think they fixed their water problem by adding this extra little triangle on here to redirect the water. Never mind the missing shingles, but that's not part of it. But now they carry all the water out past the edge. They fixed it. I think this is a beautiful detail. Someone was thinking about it. This one, beautiful detail. This is a 1-year warranty inspection I was doing in Chaska. You can see that you've got these gutters. You've got gutters on the back side of the house. You got them on the sides. You've got a downspout here. Dumps all this water onto the roof surface and it runs down. It would have hit right on top of this window. I'd be really concerned about that window, but the builder thought about this and said, oh, I don't want water leaking in around the window. I'm going to fix that. And they put this extra triangle there. They put this on the roof. All this does is divert that water away from the window. It's kind of like a gigantic kickout flash almost. Beautiful. This is the opposite of that. This was like a 2 or 3-year-old home, and you take all the water from the upper roof and you redirect it. It comes right back against the house. So where's water leaking in? Right where I circled there. When I did the initial walkthrough at this house, it just, oh, darn it. Thanks. When I did the initial walkthrough, go down in the basement, it's all stained at the rim area. This is that same house. Water's leaking in right at that circled area, and then it comes down, and I give up. This is going to do what it wants to do. Here's just a bunch more roof lines showing how this is how we build houses. All this upper water. Just think about this when you're driving around looking at houses. Comes down to the lower roof surface, comes right down here. I'm concerned about water intrusion at this window. I'm concerned about basement water intrusion here. Same thing here, brand new house. All that water gets concentrated in the front door. A few more, we got everything on the front of this house. One small area.
Now, are you making these comments based on, regardless of gutters?
Yes.
Well, unless the one's directed all of it.
But even if you do put a gutter on here, some of these it's really challenging. I mean, here they do have a downspout and a gutter. The downspout comes right here, and then you've got a concrete walkway that wraps around here. So where does that all go?
You just replace the concrete every few years.
I don't know.
1,000 square foot house generates 600 gallons of water for 1 inch main.
That's a lot of water.
Find me a gutter that'll handle that.
Yeah, I'll show you a gutter that won't in a second here. Everything, one small line. This house, I'm going to show this one twice. I got a close-up view of some laughable flashing at this house right below this window. I'll show that in a second. But everything at the front comes into one area. Same thing there. This one, Patrick, where are you? You remember this one? We did this one together. This is a pre-drywall inspection. This is out in Chaska. We did this on a dry day, and we said, look, all the water from this peak to this peak and everything in between is going to come right down here, and I'm going to be concerned about water coming in your basement, but I think water might even actually hit the wall here. So what's going to happen? I don't know what they're going to put up for siding. But then we ended up doing the final inspection on a day when it was raining. You gotta remember this. We went skiing down the back hill.
That was back in Cheval.
Huh?
In the Cheval project. I used to manage Charles Scott.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't manage this one. So that was the case. All the water comes right down here, and it finds the house.
Yeah. That's great.
Brand new. I was doing everything in my power to try to find signs of water leaking in the day I was there at this brand new house. I never did find water leaking in, but I'm sure that it was leaking in.
Yes, it will.
It will, yeah.
7 years.
And then it leads to rotted sheathing. I've got a bunch of pictures courtesy of Matt Roach with Barrier something or another. I'm sure he got it. Barrier Construction. These are photos of stucco-clad houses where he goes in and he tears them apart and fixes water damage. And note where all the damage happens. It's happening below corners of windows, below middles of windows, the mullion strips there, and below roof wall intersections. These are particularly nasty locations.
How many years are we talking?
I don't know, Barry, Antonio, what do you guys say? I'd say less than 10 years on most of these
I
probably.
found damage in stucco houses that are 4 years old.
That bad?
Not that bad,
But getting there.
but getting there.
What I've heard from Mark Parley is that within the first couple of years, water. I really gotta just pause. It's like I can't deal with this. No, I can't. All right, I'm going to. I don't know how to pause it. I've heard within the first couple of years, houses start to decline a little bit, little more, and then once you start approaching that 10-year period, they really fall off a cliff, and they get really bad. I suspect that that's where most of these houses would be. That's just water damage. And
Yeah.
the point of showing this is that you don't need penetrations for water intrusion. That's usually where it ends up happening. But on stucco is a big old sponge on the side of your house. It will absorb water. Water can come in around stucco anywhere. And I'll show how that works in a
Is
second.
that a chimney? What was it?
This, I believe it's a chimney chase. Yeah, exactly. That was just a fun one. Mushrooms growing out of the basement wall. So we all know what kick-out flashings are. It's a piece of metal that gets bent to direct water out so water doesn't leak into the wall after it's run down. There's a nice diagram. Side note, this diagram comes from the fine folks at Code Check. If you want illustrations to put in your inspection reports, I highly recommend their illustrations. I think they're the best ones out there. It's not the most complete library. Carson Dunlop has the best library as far as completeness, but I really like Code Check's illustrations. It's very accurate. So there's kick-out flashing. Is it required? Maybe. Just looking back at the history of what the Minnesota State Building Code has said about it, we first started requiring kick-out flashings in 2007. We adopted the 2006 IRC. There was no requirement for it in the IRC, but then we amended it and said you actually need to have it. We put this language in there. Minnesota was the only state, as far as I know, that had this. We said the lower portion of a roof stops within the plane of intersecting wall, blah, 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 divert or kick out water away from the assembly. We actually use that language. You need to kick it out. Then in 2015, we amended it again. We took out the language kick out, but we said you have to basically do the same thing. You need to divert water out away from the wall in accordance with section R903 point whatever. That's the roofing section. When you turn to the roofing section of our code, we don't amend it at all. We adopt the national roofing code exactly the way that it is in the IRC. And it says a flashing shall be installed to divert water away where the eve of the slope roof intersects a vertical sidewall. So 2007 will be the year that kickout flashing kind of first started being required here in Minnesota. But even though it's required today, our new code says that unless you're actually doing a re-side and a re-roof at the same time, you're not required to install kickout flashing. It's a little unfortunate. So if you see a brand new roof and they didn't put kickout flashing in, you can't go and say they did this wrong. You'd be wrong if you said that. You can say they did it in a manner that may allow for water intrusion, and there's a much better way that you could flash these, and I highly recommend you have this done. It's fine to make recommendations for that, but when you go and you call somebody wrong for following the code, well, nobody's going to like you. You gotta get arguments. Here's what kickout flashing looks like installed. Sometimes people get the idea that this intersection is a bad intersection and we need to pay special attention to it, and I know water gets in here somehow, and I don't want to go to all the work of flashing because I don't know how to flash, so we'll just caulk it. That's bad news. Because when people caulk it, they're making sure that water that's gotten underneath the shingles and flashing can't possibly get back out. You're trapping the water in the wall there. You should never see caulk in place of kickout flashing. And so water comes in, it stays there, and then I go underneath and I take my awl and it goes right through the wood. And remember, siding is very good at hiding water damage. When you have rotted wood siding, I can just about guarantee that sheathing behind it is either going to be gone or it's going to be in really bad shape. There's another example of that. Missing kickout flashing. They caulked it here. I gave it a little push, too much. My finger went right through.
You just talk over that.
You can caulk it, yeah. Just some fun kickout flashing that I just appreciate. You know, they didn't know how to do it, so they used some silicone and got a bent up piece of metal, and then they kind of stuck something else in here. It's about ½ inch high. I thought that was special. I like this one too. This was completely useless. Someone told them you need kickout flashing, so they just made a slit in a piece of step flashing. They bent it in and they glued it to the wall. They just lifted the shingle up. Look at this. This does absolutely nothing. It's not even lapped in with the step flashing. Useless, but they fooled somebody. So, I don't know. Just some other fun details where they don't have kickout flashing. You know there's going to be a rotted mess there. Mark Parley, he's a big fan of using this stuff, these pre-bent flashings, these big plastic scoops that really handle large volumes of water and direct it out of the wall. I think those are fantastic. The problem with them is I've never seen one before. I've seen them at many seminars, people advertising these. This is the way to go. I've yet to see one ever installed at a house. What I always see is these pre-made kickout flashings or flashings that people make in the field. And flashings can be made, this is just for fun. You can make flashing out of a piece of, you can make kickout flashing out of a piece of step flashing really easily. We had a speaker come in and teach at a Michi seminar probably, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. This guy came in with a siding break and he must have spent 2 hours bending tin for us. And it was entertaining, but he showed us how to
All you need to do is you take your long nose pliers, you put it about halfway in
Here's how you
on a
make
piece
it.
of
I'm
flash.
copying what he's
You
talking.
give it a half twist like this. Pull that out there. Kind of bend it a little. Squeeze that together, and you have your kickout flash. I can kind of bend this shape a little better.
It probably wouldn't hurt to just do it in the place to kind of flatten it. But that's it. Kickout flashing should never have a cut. I see that done all the time when people cut it. It's like, this is all it takes.
Nice, perfect little piece.
I don't even know how to do it. I managed to make one. First one I've ever done, right on video there. Okay, more fun flashing. Just have to share some of this stuff because it's fun. They knew that this intersection needed to be flashed, so they used lots of step flashing, goop, and spray foam, of course. This one, the chimney, there's step flashing, but there's no counter flashing. Someone told them you need counter flashing. It's the stuff that goes over it. And so they got a roll of coil stock and they screwed some of it to the edge. It's wide open underneath there.
I'm on it, boss.
Yeah, exactly. When I was on the ground, I kind of looked at it and went, oh yeah, that looks good. Yeah, fantastic. Get up on the roof and oh, they didn't do anything. They just hit it. There's another nice use of spray foam. Here's that house. Look at the photo at the top right. That's that photo I showed you earlier. All the water gets concentrated in one area right at this window. And then here's the detail on that window. Here's the step flashing. They cut it too short to get the window in there. They didn't even cover the flashing. So this area gets absolutely pounded. And there's the house wrap. It's guaranteed to leak underneath there. More fun step flashing. They just put sticky stuff against the stucco. Oh, what do we miss? Another one. More roll roofing right up against the stucco. How's this not going to leak, right? So I brought a ton of moisture meters in here. I'll leave these up here if anybody wants to check them out after this class. But I highly recommend you get a moisture meter to determine if you got water intrusion at walls. It's one of the few tools that I feel like I just could not do a home inspection without. I need my flashlight, I need my electrical tester, maybe my electrical tester. I definitely need my moisture meter. I've blogged about this. I've got a couple different blog posts on different moisture meters, but there's two basic things that a moisture meter can do. You get a pin probe moisture meter where you take the pins and you stick it into a wall. You can stick this into wood, you can stick it into drywall, you can stick it into lots of surfaces and get a moisture content reading. That's one way to do it. Another is to get a scanner, like the Trimax here. This one is just a surface scanner. It's got radio waves that shoot out into the wall. It works really well for things like wood, drywall. It'll scan right through vinyl siding, does a fantastic job with that. It's good for hardboard siding, good for lots of stuff. It's useless on metal though. If there's any type of metal, forget it. It'll send back 100% and it's useless. So
Useless on stucco.
huh?
Stucco.
It's useless on stucco because what do you have right behind the stucco? You got metal. Yeah, you got metal left. So it's no good on those materials. And when you're using a scanning moisture meter, you slowly move it across the surface. And if you see the moisture level slowly increase, it probably tells you you have a leak. If you start sliding across the surface and all of a sudden the moisture level goes to 100%, you got a false positive, almost surely. You hit metal. So if the levels just fall off a cliff, don't trust your reading.
What meter was that? What did you call it, meter?
Well, it's the method that the moisture meter uses to identify moisture. You've got pin probe and you got scan mode. Those are the kind of the two ways that moisture meters work. And for these meters here, you've got I've got one here that all it does is scan. All this one does is pin mode. All this one does is pins. This one will do both. This does both. This does both. This one does both. So you got a lot of moisture meters that do both. My advice would be to get one that does both. I'm a huge fan of this one. This is the Protimeter Survey Master. It's the one that I got at the end. Looks just like the Protimeter Mini, except it also has scan mode built in. I like this one because of the shape. They don't sell it in this shape anymore. If you want this shape, you got to get it on eBay. The new version of it is this one down here. It's a little boxier. It doesn't fit in your tool pouch quite as well. But I do love this one. And then there's another one that I just did a blog post about. It's the X-Tech MO55. It does a lot of the same stuff that the Protimeter Survey Master does. It does pin probe and it does scan. But while the Survey Master goes for a little under $500, This one you can get for $80 on Amazon. So if you want a starter moisture meter, this is not a bad one to get. The scan mode and pin probe.
So why the price difference?
I don't know. I can tell you, number one, I don't like the size as much. It doesn't fit in your tool pouch as well. Another is the Survey Master lets you plug in an external jack, which I think is huge. I just, personally, I would not buy a moisture meter that didn't let me plug in an external jack, because I use them. What I'm showing you here is some deep wall probes. I got a video showing some deep wall probes, but it's got a jack on the side. I can plug this in, and then I can use these probes in tough to get at areas. The Survey Master even lets you use a hammer probe. This is a hammer probe for checking stuff and other things like that. I can plug it right into the Survey Master. It's a very versatile moisture meter. Big fan of that. But oh, the Ryobi? No. Just no. That's all. The Ryobi, those are $50. And then these depths I've got, 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, 1 inch. That's the scan mode depth. Don't get hung up on that. I mean, looking at these numbers, it seems like this one by General that scans 2 inches should be the best. It's by far the worst out of all of these. If anything scans more than about 3/4 to 1 inch, I don't trust it. Seriously. And if you're interested, oh, by the way, I didn't say this earlier, but I already put this presentation online. If you guys go to the calendar, the Google Calendar on the ASHI Heartland website, and you click on the event, you can download this whole presentation. I've got the whole PowerPoint there. It's like 2 gigs. I've got so many videos in here, but you can download it. So you can save all this info. You can't quite read it on the screen, but right at the top here, I've got the website of a blog post I wrote saying why I think the Survey Master is the best one out there. Here's a little comparison I did. Patrick, you remember this? Antonio, you were here. We were in the middle of doing moisture testing here at this townhouse, so pardon the ladder noises.
This gets about 99%.
That's the Survey Master. I'm using scanning right through the line side.
900.
That's the one I don't like. Scans 2 inches.
That's about 20 to 21%.
20 to 21%, whereas the Survey Master was peg. Survey Master said this wall is soaked. This said 20 to 21%. And by the way, side note, if you're using a pin probe moisture meter, you're sticking those pins in the wood, the reading should be fairly accurate. It depends on which one you're using. If you're using a scan mode, ignore the percentage. A lot of moisture meters don't even say percentage. It just gives you a number. It's all relative. If you have, and the way to use a scan mode on a moisture meter is you go to a dry portion of a wall to establish a baseline, and you move it to a suspected wet area. And you look for your number to go up. Don't ever report percentages with a scan mode because, well, it's meaningless. Oh, and something else I forgot to mention. Some of the moisture meters, if you're doing, when we do invasive moisture testing, we're taking actual percentages. We want those numbers to be fairly accurate. The ones that we use for that are typically going to be the Delmhorst units. And for these, you got to enter the species of wood that you're testing and the temperature. You got to enter both of those in there, and then it does a calculation to give you a fairly accurate moisture reading. If I'm just using my Survey Master, it's a little more basic device. I don't enter any special data. It's just more plug and play, click and shoot, something like that. Okay, so. And, you know, we'll skip the rest of this video. Just trust me, you get what you pay for in a scanning moisture meter most of the time. But I did, well, I got 2 more video clips here. Here's one showing a Survey Master, how we use it in scan mode. And note how, what I really love about this is as you're moving it, you see the indicator, you see that light moving. It's very helpful to just see that light moving and then hear the ticking noise quickly changing. You can quickly scan a surface. With the other one, the one by X-Tech that goes for $80, really all it does is it gives you a digital display of the moisture level. You got to go a lot more slowly. You really got to look at the display. With the Survey Master, I can take it and I can just keep talking and scanning this wall and just listen. So, what happened?
You're slowing down.
I'm slowing down. I'm sorry, but all right, we'll just show a few more. Survey Masters work on tile. You got a leaking toilet. We scan around toilets all the time. There's a newer version of it. Jim, was this you? Or this Dustin?
No, that's my hand.
That's you? Yeah, he's finding a wet wall. I mean, you can see the water marks, but instead of saying it looks like it's all wet and it felt damp, use a moisture meter. You take a video. This is very definitive. You certainly have a wet wall here.
You have to admit that one looks cooler.
The moisture meter?
Yeah.
It absolutely does. Yeah. If I didn't have a pouch to put it into and I just carried it, I would definitely use this one instead. All right, so there's enough of that. Oh,
Right. I'm taking it to the target. Too slow.
yeah. Shouldn't have backed up. All right. Well, it's a good time to talk to everybody who signed in online. For all the online participants, if you would, please sign in with your name.
Good time to get more pizza.
Good time for more pizza, yes. All that.
Reuben, in a good wall, are you gonna have a normal variation in the moisture content from the
Not really,
top of the
no.
wall to the bottom of the wall?
You might find a little variation when you hit studs. And if you put your moisture meter right on a fastener, a nail, a drywall screw, something like that, you might find something there. This class must suck. Bye, everyone. Okay, so here's a quick scan comparison. I'm using the moisture meter on vinyl. This is a wall with a known water intrusion problem. And instead of saying, well, I suspect there's water here, I'm using my moisture meter, I'm scanning it first. And I really like the way the Survey Master works, but, well, you can see they both get the job done.
Let's not forget the X-Act 55. I know it's wet in here, so we'll do a quick scan to show how this reacts when it finds moisture.
You guys see that? Goes up to about 22,
It's high.
23, 22.
Is this reading the same depth as the Survey Master?
Yeah, 3/4 or 1 inch, I don't remember, but
It comes up to about 22.
Then how do you
Another
report that?
big shot, 21, 22.
how do I report it?
Take the Dawkins.
I open up that seam right after that, and then I verify it's saturated. I take a picture and, yeah. Yep, absolutely. If I didn't feel comfortable opening up that seam, all I'd really be able to say is I highly suspect there's water intrusion. Get somebody else who's comfortable opening up that seam to verify. Frank?
How did you pick that seam? You got a house full of a million seams.
There's a window directly above it on a gable wall. I'll show it to you in a second.
Okay, so now I'll take the Survey Master. All right, first.
Okay.
All right, well,
On the
too bad. I guess you don't get to see the Survey Master. On the chimneys, chimney chases. No, all right, I do want to show it to you. We'll try this one more time.
So over here, it's showing nothing. Now right there, it's what's going up. So it's ticking, and you see that light, that indicator goes across real quickly. High right in there. Oh, real high there. Then another high spot.
Those meters give you a red light at 20%.
Yep, about 20%.
More than 20% is considered wet.
It's all relative. All relative. Depends on what I'm scanning. Really what I'm using it for is to determine if there's been water intrusion and if we have elevated water levels. That's really all I'm using the scan mode on my moisture meter for.
How long does it take that siding to dry out after the rain?
I don't know. What do you think, Barry? About a week?
Vinyl, probably a week. Stucco, 2 to 3 months.
You're that vinyl about a week, stucco 2 or 3 months.
That's how long it takes to produce.
Okay, so for chimneys, I'm always concerned when I see chimneys, especially, well, really what I'm thinking of when I say chimney is a chimney chase. I'm not talking about the actual chimney itself, but when you've got these metal chimneys for wood burning fireplaces or whatever, and then you've got a wood chase that surrounds it. This is basically a miniature house. You've got kind of a roof on top here, and the water comes down the sides no matter which way the wind's blowing, whichever way the rain's coming. All of these walls just get pounded. So I pay special attention to all of these. And the worst areas are always going to be the sides of the chimney that face the house. The ones that face away, people seem to find out that there's water leaking in, and they seem to deal with them much faster than they do these. And remember, all siding does a good job of hiding water. When you've got holes in your siding like this, that's really bad news. Here's a closer look at that, just zoomed in. Sheathing is nasty behind there. Down here at the bottom, again, we got the caulk instead of kick-out flashing. Lots of water leaking in there. The siding was just, well, the siding's gone here. You know what's going on there. This is masonite. Masonite is the one material where it seems to rot just as fast as the sheathing does. Here you've got paint holding this together. Just kind of peeled it up very gingerly. Oh yeah, we got a rotted mess. Here I poked my finger a little too hard. Should have been a little more ginger there. Push on wood, push on siding. It's amazing how often you can go up to wood-sided houses, give it a little push, and it just, there's nothing behind it. It really gives. That's a good trick to use. And at this house, I'll come back to this one in a little case study I got for wood siding, but I do it all the time. Finger went through there. You can see where, you can see where the wood should be. It should be touching that caulk and give it a little push. It all goes back. Sheathing's gone, or it's really nasty. Look underneath chimney chases too. If there's any way you can look underneath the chimney chase, that's a really good telltale sign they got problems. You can see the sheathing is totally rotted out here. That's insulation we're looking at. And then this white stuff, that's advanced rotting. Watch out for splashing water too. Think about all these roof lines. Think about places where water might splash against the house. Those are areas where you're going to have water intrusion. Here's a fun little case study. Malin took these photos. You've got a roof that splashes on the deck. Gutters would solve this, but water's going to splash. So he was really concerned about water intrusion. Thankfully, it was an unfinished basement. He went downstairs and he saw this. Come on. We know that there's a rotted mess there. So he pulled the insulation away, and this is what he got. That's what used to be the rim joist, just a hot mess in there. And it's plain as day why this is happening.
And the deck is attached to that.
Yeah, exactly. That deck is right on the other side. Now, there's another example of that. I wish I would have taken a picture from farther away, but you've got an upper surface draining onto the lower roof surface here, and then it all comes down here and it hits this thing and it splashes against the house. Number one, Barry, good eyes. You notice the trees going out of the wall? Yes, that is a soil. That is a flag. Yeah.
I noticed the doggy step. What the hell is that trip hazard? Sorry, this is being recorded.
None of my business. But when I told the buyer, look, you need to open up the wall here. I know you've got a rotted mess here. I give the siding a push, it gave. And it's one of the few cases where somebody actually sent me photos after they opened up the wall. Nobody ever sent me stuff. But it was a mess. It also found out this window was leaking too. So we've got water coming in a few different areas. But all I had to do was take my moisture meter too. Just scan the wall. It zings. I mean, that moisture meter sounds off when you find water behind the wood siding. It'll read right through it and find that wet sheathing. I'm a huge fan of gutters. So take all that water instead of running down the edge and potentially hitting the walls, and keep it away from the walls. It's not just about basement water intrusion. It's about protecting your walls. this was a fun one. This is my neighbor's house. This is 2 neighbors ago who did this. They had this like a piping that you use for a sump pump discharge at the exterior, way too small to handle this volume of water. But that's what he had attached at the end of his downspout. And it wouldn't handle all that water. So you can see, if you look carefully, water is leaking out of the seam. There's a screw hole here, and there's water shooting out of it about 12 feet because there's water built all the way up to the top. I took a video. It's just counting the house everywhere. And it's because it's not big enough. You won't handle all that water. You got this stupid reducer out there. Yeah. The current donor, to be fair to the current donor, he's a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to house stuff. He had his whole yard redone, and he put in these monster 6-inch drains for all the downspouts. So he doesn't have these issues anymore. And then all those drains terminate way in the backyard, and it's just a torrential, a lot of water coming out of the back of the house there. So next owner fixed it. I've heard builders say that they don't like gutters because gutters cause ice dams, and they cause more problems than they create. And I say no, they don't. Anything can cause problems if you don't maintain it, but gutters don't cause ice dams. I'm showing a picture of a wicked ice dam here. There's no gutters on this house. Ice dams happen in the same place, and here's how it works. This diagram, courtesy of Steve Cool, he's presented for our chapter. He's the ice dam god. No, maybe not that, but he's a very knowledgeable guy, and he likes making these diagrams. This is where an ice dam occurs. It happens at the unheated edge of the roof, and it starts right here. If you add a gutter onto the same house, that ice dam, the mass of ice is going to continue out over the top of the gutter. You're going to have a much larger mass of ice that you got to deal with. But it doesn't change the formation location of that ice dam. The ice dam is still going to start at the exact same place, and the ice dam isn't going to travel up the roof any more than it would have otherwise. The ice dam is still going to be right here. It ends here, it ends here, whether you got the gutter or not. Gutters don't cause ice dams. They don't cause leaks from ice dams. And then wood siding, I already said push on it. I got some videos of pushing on wood. This is fun stuff. This is a chimney chase, just a quick little video. Walk up to it, give it a shove. It should not do that. It looks fine, but it's not. It should all be solid. Here's a more dramatic version of that. This is a house I just inspected about a month ago. I did a pre-listing inspection, so I won't even say what city this is in. But it had a big exposed gable wall. The house was built in the 80s, like 82, 83 or something. Original owner, this is his baby, he knows everything about the house. But I drove up to the house and I just went, how are these windows not going to be leaking? There's absolutely no protection whatsoever. And so the first thing I did is get my ladder out, climb up there, and start pushing on the wood here. There we go. Someone else is talking in the background. Just pushing really lightly. Well, I'm trying to push lightly. Oh, a little too much. Oops. Pushy. Another window. Same house. Can you see how it's moving when I push it? Made it really light.
How did you take that?
Not well. He was not in a good mood after this. And this is the first thing I looked at. And then the moisture meter. Look how effective this is. Look at that. It just sings. I get down here. 82% is showing me. It's high there too. Singing way down here. All that damage extends way down. The siding's fine, but it's finding water damage behind it. These moisture meters are fantastic on wood siding. A couple of case studies, just kind of looking at the big picture of the house and then looking at some damaged areas. This was a fun one where you had the exposed chimney. There's me pushing on the chimney. I showed that earlier. Water hits it from every single direction. And then go around the backside. And when you see drip marks, but you don't see them above, it tells you water is leaking out of that intersection. Water, there was no gutters, water's hitting the deck, it's leaking in around there. And then I went inside, unfinished basement, go to the rim joist, pull the insulation away, and you know what I found? There it is. This is inside the house. Pull that away, stick my hand in just so you can appreciate how bad it is.
There's no ledger flashing on that, was there?
Let's go back. I can't tell. No, you know what? It looks like it is there, but I'm not positive. No? I'm getting those? Okay. I don't remember. See, I'm not super focused on the little details always. It's more, where does water end up? Where do I need to check for water? Take a moisture meter, scan it quick. Oh, it's wet.
If the ceiling is finished, what do you
If the ceiling's finished, I use my moisture meter on the outside. If it's wet, I say have somebody open this up and figure it out. That's enough ammo for me. And not only that, but on a house like this, I don't remember if I made this recommendation then, but I would definitely make it today. If I find these issues in these different places, there's probably more that I'm not finding. I'm going to recommend invasive moisture testing to whoever's buying it. And that's where you get somebody like us or some other company who does invasive testing to drill holes all over the place and take those hammer probes or something similar and stick it into the sheathing all over the place and document all these different moisture locations.
Regardless of the type of siding.
It depends on the siding. I'd recommend it on vinyl. I'd recommend it on wood. I'd recommend it on stucco. Yeah, I'd recommend it on just about, just about regardless.
90% of the houses.
The one that I couldn't really recommend it on would be steel siding or aluminum siding. But in those cases, it'd be invasive testing from the inside. That can be done.
Those meters aren't gonna work on steel siding.
Exactly. And you can't drill holes in those either. Yeah.
Even if you hold it out in the steel siding.
Yeah. It'll tell you 100%. Yep. Okay, so another fun wood siding case. All the water front of the house gets concentrated in one area. There's no gutter, and the water comes in and hits the wall. Took my moisture meter, 100%. Look at the back of the house. These gutters were only on here for about 2 weeks. The house never used to have gutters. So all the water came down, hit this lower roof surface, came down here, splashes against the deck. It leaks in. The wall underneath here was completely saturated. And then there are signs of water inside the basement too. And then you get up close, you can see you got a little bit of rot here, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, if you just call it rotted trim, you're missing the big picture. There's water all over this house. Here's my moisture meter. I'm holding it up against the siding, not the trim. I'm not using the pin probes here either. I'm using the scan. And you can see it's red. It's telling me this wall is definitely wet. A lot of water intrusion at this house. That deal fell apart. The sellers didn't want to admit they had any problems. For vinyl sided houses, it's all about, with all of these houses, it's about taking a step back, thinking about which areas are going to be the most prone to water intrusion. Focus your effort on those. That's this first one here. This happens to be my own house. And I'll tell you, as far as vinyl siding goes, it's ugly. I'll admit that. And there's problems with it. But as far as performance, I don't know that there's really anything that's going to outperform vinyl. I mean, like we just talked about, water gets behind vinyl and it soaks the sheathing maybe a week before it dries out. Vinyl is a rain screen. It's not supposed to be waterproof. It will let water in behind it by design, and it's okay. The water just drains back out. Air moves in and out behind vinyl. it performs pretty darn well. And it's pretty easy to take vinyl off the house and put it back on. So I liked vinyl for performance, but in this particular case, gable wall, I'm concerned about this window. Gets a lot of exposure to rain. I'm even more concerned about this one. And if there's another window down here, I'd be even more concerned about that one. So that one where I showed you, I'm doing the comparison, the two different moisture meters scanning, it was right below the corner of this window. Water leaks in. And here's, just in case you're curious why it leaks. Well, there's a telltale sign that you may have a water intrusion problem. When we see stains like this around windows, sometimes it's condensation, sometimes it's water intrusion. If you take your moisture meter and you find it's all wet during the middle of winter, it's probably condensation. It's wet in the middle of summer, probably water leakage. But all the water comes down the wall, it hits the top of the window, goes behind the J channel, comes down the sides, and somebody should have taken that J channel and bent the top over, but they didn't. So we're relying on caulking at this location. As soon as the caulk fails, water leaks in around the window. It wasn't installed right, and you have a lot of water concentrated in one area. Another neighbor said I could exploit his house. There's a neighbor on the other side of it. I know about all my neighbors' water problems. This one told me I've got something, this dirt that keeps showing up in my living room carpet. I don't know what this is.
Doesn't always vacuum out.
Yeah, it sucks it up all the time. I came over and gave the window a little bang. A lot more fell out. Yeah, it's not insects. I'm sorry. That's your wall. Your wall is falling apart. So we went outside. Think about where all the water goes. Comes down this valley and all these roof surfaces, hits the lower roof, and this didn't have kickout flashing, and it's all right at a window. This is the area right here where we're seeing the stuff, pieces of wall. Yeah, you can see a little staining here, but otherwise the siding all looked good. I mean, vinyl is good at hiding water intrusion, but I just gave it a little push. There's nothing there, nothing behind it. I took my moisture meter, and it's saying 100% everywhere I touched. And guess why? Barry, I know you why. You know why. It's this sheathing that's got that foil facing on it. You can't use your moisture meter on it. This is why I'm such a fan of pulling back vinyl. You need to know what's behind there. You try using your moisture meter to scan through this, it's going to tell you 100%. Readings are useless.
But it would tell you 100% throughout the whole house.
Yeah, exactly. Anywhere you go. I mean, that should tell you got a problem. I'll tell you, I know, Barry, you did a follow-up inspection where a home inspector had done that. And you went out and you told them, no, everything's fine.
Thermax too, if it's Thermax TV.
Okay, sure. Yep. So anything with that foil. But, okay, so that kickout flashing, pretend it's not there. I installed that for him when we found the mess. But we pulled some of the siding off, and then here's what it looked like down below there. There's another shot. You can see this is his living room wall. Insulation's gone, sheathing's gone. Studs are rotted. Studs are rotted away to nothing. This has been leaking, I don't know, since the house was built. 16 years. Here's what his living room looks like. Rim board got completely replaced. This is all brand new. But the good news is that this whole project was taking all the siding off, putting it in a neat little stack on the front sidewalk, replacing all the rotted wood. Took one guy about 3 days to do all this and then throw the siding back on. This whole project was like $8,000 or something like that. It wasn't that big of a deal. If this had been stucco, this damage would have been so far worse. And it would have been so much more expensive to take all that stucco off and then replace the stucco, either try to match it or do a wall-to-wall repair. I mean, way more expensive for any other type of siding, but especially stucco. It's pretty cheap to fix it when you got vinyl. There's another shot of that same rim board. This one, Jim, you remember this one? We did this together. This was
that one where it was outside the bathroom?
Yep. You only got a quick glimpse in your remembrance. So
I was moody.
We're concerned about this a little bit. You go to the back of the house, and my first thought was, I'm concerned about this window. We don't have much protection. Come on. I'm concerned about this one. We don't have much protection. Both of these windows are fine. No issues there. And so I was like, well, maybe this house is okay. But then you go inside, and then this window looks horrible. It's got fogged glass. It always kind of makes you a little concerned. But really, a failed window seal has nothing to do with water intrusion. The two are totally separate issues. So that's nothing. But then you look at the bottom of the window, and it's all stained there too. And I call that a red herring, just there to throw you off. It's all stained, but it's around the tub. So of course it's stained. It's condensation. It's going to be hot. And okay, so we shouldn't be worried about this. But you know, every once in a while when your spidey senses are just tingling, it's just like, no, I'm still missing something here. And so we decided to open the window. And
You
then,
decided to open the window.
the royal we opened the window, took the screen out, and gave the siding a little push. Oh, this doesn't feel good. I don't think there's any sheathing behind it. There's a little sheathing. There's the corners of the window. Here's what it looked like. I just skipped ahead. I already showed you pictures of the moisture meter. Here's what it looks like when I pull the siding back. Just give it a little push. Oh, right? This is what happens on vinyl all the time. I'm telling you, you start checking, you will find this all over. Yeah, I carry a zip tool with me. I usually don't use it. I have one for everybody, yes. I'll give you mine before we leave. Yeah. This was a fun one. Melin's not here. Melin did this one with me. This house was, I think it was about 5 years old. Supposedly, one owner, he was a builder. He built this himself, custom home, and he really knew his stuff. And this house should be perfect, but it was a bank-owned property now. I don't know, but think about where all the water goes. It comes down here. We've got this. See these stains, telltale signs of probably problems. One of the dumbest designs I've ever seen. I think this was about 7 years ago we found this one. This. We've got a butterfly roof. You like all the silicone caulk they added here? Something was leaking. It all comes down and it hits this surface. We've got caulk instead of flashing at the back of the house, under the deck. I mean, duh. You definitely have a water problem here. Side note, they're not a fan of Joyce fingernails on this big beam. Wow. But there's a shot looking away. Water intrusion all over the place. And when you see these drip marks on vinyl siding, it might mean water intrusion, not necessarily. It could mean other things. So don't get too whipped up when you see that. But check it out. Peel the siding back. Use your moisture meter. Go a step further. This is probably the most aggressive thing I've ever done during a home inspection. And Melin was with me to get it on tape. I probably wouldn't do this again, but you know.
I was going to say, that's younger.
Yeah, this is a while ago.
Everywhere that we opened up the siding, we've looked for moisture intrusion, we found it. So we're going to check behind the siding and see what it looks like.
Now keep in mind, these walls are just mush.
Sometimes you can just get this out. I'll start by just giving it a push. You can see this is really rotted. I know this isn't an invasive inspection, but it's just bad. I'm not going to be doing any harm. Really are. So that's
Look
pretty
at that. I
rotted.
mean, come on.
And that's what I've found pretty much everywhere in this house.
Yeah, it's nasty. Yeah, let the bank find out about that.
Well, you filmed it.
Where? I don't see it, Bill. Prove it. This will all be edited out before I put it on. So,
Yeah, floating head of Jordan.
so as far as water intrusion with vinyl siding, as far as what it takes to do moisture testing, a specialized inspection. Here's one where with Antonio, Patrick, you guys were doing this one together. It was a townhome park, community, whatever, all these standalone townhomes, and they hired us to test every single one. So we spent a day going one right after the other in power mode. All the water's coming down off the roof. It comes down, it hits the deck. And so where are we concerned about water intrusion? We're focusing on the corners of the deck here. That's going to be the worst areas for water. So we go right to it. Here's Antonio doing it. He's got a zip tool. But first, he uses the scanning moisture meter. 18%, 20%, 16%. As he goes down, it gets lower. So it tells us we're concerned about that. Elevated level. We're not concerned about the exact number, but if we scan over here and it's 10, and then you come under the deck and it's 20, that's a moisture problem. So he's using his zip tool a little quicker. Not like you necessarily need it, but it's a little easier. Take some moisture meter.
Go ahead. Let's see what you got. Oh. Yeah, just pegs it. That's just moisture there, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
And note what you're seeing here. Tyvek, or some type of house wrap, first started being required here in Minnesota in 2003. That's when it actually got spelled out specifically in the building code. You need to use house wrap. Vinyl siding manufacturers, what varies it? Haven't they always required it? Or for a long time before 2003, but it was just never enforced. And
I think that was the problem. They didn't specifically say you have to have it.
okay,
So the building code officials were not requiring it because it wasn't in the vinyl siding installation instructions.
okay.
So it doesn't hurt the vinyl siding if it gets.
Yeah, exactly. It won't hurt their product. So 2003 it started being required, but once people started putting it on, they didn't know exactly why they were doing it. They had never done it before. Building officials weren't exactly sure why this had to be done, but we got to make people do it. So as long as the house wrap was there, you pretty much passed your inspection. As you saw at the end of this video I just showed you, the house wrap started, maybe a couple inches below the deck. That's absolutely useless. So I don't put a lot of stock into saying this is good because it has house wrap or it's bad because it doesn't. It's nice. It lowers the potential for water intrusion problems, but I don't use it as a definitive. This is good, this is bad. A couple little things with vinyl, just because these are arguments against vinyl. There's the looks, of course, and then people will say it's much more susceptible to hail damage, and it's true. I'm sure we saw a lot of houses just recently. They got pounded on June 11th, I think it was. But also, I like this one because they did their own repairs. They used duct tape as high as their ladder would reach. I didn't catch these. I'm sure we've all seen this. Just for anybody who isn't familiar with it, if you see melted vinyl siding about chest height right outside the patio door, that was a grill. They had the grill too close to the vinyl siding and they melted it. If you see streaks of melted vinyl siding, that's special. That's reflected sunlight. Bless you. There's this fairly new thing that I recently learned about. It's called collapsed glass. This is yours, George? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Called collapsed glass. It's where you have these sealed window units. And you've got some type of gas in between the panes of glass, like argon, something like that. And I'm not an expert at describing this, but from what I understand, the molecules for this gas are smaller than air molecules, and they can end up escaping from the window when it gets really cold. It shrinks a little bit. The molecules leave, and the glass collapses in on itself. It gets tighter. Air molecules are too large to enter back into this opening. So the glass pulls in on itself, and then if you take an infrared camera, you can identify it very easily. That's what you're seeing here.
Easier to identify in the winter than it is the summer.
Is that so? Okay. Oh, whoa. Oh, yeah, with your infrared camera?
Yep.
Absolutely. I don't know if you ever would identify this in the summer. Good point. Thank you. Yeah. I wouldn't even try in the summer.
Best way in the summer is if you're outside and there's no screen, you see a little curve in the window, that's gonna be collapsed glass.
You're good. I wouldn't claim to be able to even see that curve. I've got one at my office where a blog reader donated this to me. He took it out of his own house. You put your fingers on the two sides of the glass, and it's like your fingers are touching. The glass is actually touching itself. It is sucked in that much, and it stays that way. Collapsed glass. If you Google that term, you can find more information about it.
One manufacturer?
No, not one particular manufacturer. This can happen to anybody's glass. Infrared cameras are really good at figuring this out. So that's collapsed glass. I'm sidetracking about windows, but if you have a low E coated window, it's a low emissivity. It prevents a bunch of the heat from the sun from going through into the house. And it's basically a reflective coating on the outside. It makes the window kind of like a mirror. So when you have these two conditions at the same time, low E coating and glass that has collapsed, it's curved a little bit. Now you've got the magnifying glass type of effect, where it concentrates the sunlight into one small area. And that's what I'm showing here. This photo is courtesy of Don Lovering, a guy out on the East Coast. I don't remember where.
So, Reuben,
Yeah.
those windows on the bottom,
Yeah.
see how you get that kind of.
Oh, you can
That's-
see these are curved. Yeah.
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 That's what I'm talking
And all of these reflections are from the house right next door. Sun's hitting them, and the most concentrated point of sun is going to be about 20 to 30 feet away, which is typically where a neighboring house is going to be.
So who pays for that?
Who pays for that? There is no official class action lawsuit or anything like that for this condition. This is a dispute between neighbors. That's about all it is. I mean, the best advice I heard, Marco Volk, he's another ASHI inspector, his recommendation was to use ice balls at your neighbor's window. Because they leave no evidence. That's all I got. Let's see how we're doing this. Oh, well, I'm doing fine for time. This auto thing is really keeping me ahead. I haven't done with plenty of time to spare. We'll have plenty of time for
Every
today.
speaker from now on should use this.
No doubt, right? Yeah, this is great. Okay, so we're on to stucco. There's, I think we all know that there have been a lot of problems with newer stucco houses, and it's not. You don't talk about this for a second. I'm just doing this. All right. There's been a lot of problems with stucco homes, not just here in Minnesota, but in a lot of the country. Apparently, they don't have a lot of problems on the West Coast, but definitely have them here in the Midwest. I've got family who live in Kansas. They've had problems with new stucco, just a few years old. They had some major water intrusion problems. It's been big problems on the East Coast. And it's not just one thing to blame. This is a great article. People ask you, why all the problems with stucco? This is by Joe Stebrick. The L in his name is silent. Good article titled Stucco Woes, the Perfect Storm. And it's saying how it's a lot of different things that went wrong with houses, starting in about 1990 or so. That's about where stucco really started going downhill. Antonio, Barry, would you guys agree?
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s, maybe?
Mid-80s.
Mid-80s? All right. So, all right, we'll divide the two. We'll say 1990. No, I'm talking about traditional stucco.
How about 2x6 instead of 2x4 walls?
2x6 instead of 2x4 walls?
More cause of problem.
I've never heard of that being a cause of the problem. Is anybody, why is that?
Because the insulation is too thick and the walls get cold and then you get condensation on the
Bulk moisture, not
Could-
condensation.
It could contribute, I guess. I haven't heard that one, but the takeaway here is somewhere around 1990, maybe late 80s, maybe early 90s, somewhere around there, stucco started failing everywhere. And I'm not talking about beefs. I'm talking about traditional stucco. Nasty failures all over. And if I'm inspecting a house built anywhere around that time up through today, I tell the buyers, you should have invasive moisture testing on this. Well, it really doesn't matter what I find during my home inspection. Stucco is very good at hiding problems, and the repairs are hideously expensive. And the amount of money you spend on invasive moisture testing is a drop in the bucket compared to what you could potentially spend in repairs. And I'll show you what invasive testing looks like at the end of this.
Why is the stucco, why did it start failing?
Well, that's what this article is all about.
You did have one effect on stucco in that he came in and said, we can do it cheaper. We can do it for less money per square foot. And I think stucco tried to compete with them. And one of the ways they competed was they got cheaper. They started taking some shortcuts.
That's possible. Sure. Okay, so wait, it really wants me to catch up now, I think. Okay, so when you see walls that are more exposed, obviously they're more concerning. With this wall, anytime you got like a bay window, you have less roof coverage over that, more of a concern for water intrusion. We see brown stains underneath penetrations, more of a concern. It's tannins in the wood leaching out, staining the stucco. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have water intrusion. Probably do, not necessarily. And you can find a lot of houses where there's no staining below anything, and it's nasty. I'll show you a video clip of that shortly here. So it might indicate problems, but not necessarily. And then I also, this is just, it's got a mind of its own. When I talk about stone veneer or stone siding, there's a lot of different terms for it. Some of the best terms would be lumpy stucco and stucco with funnels. These are coined by Joe Stebrick. They're very accurate terms. Anytime you see stone siding, just replace in your mind, this is stucco. It's the same thing. This home, this is what I'm talking about. It's stone siding. At this particular house, this is a standalone townhome in Blaine. It's a golf course community. All of the homes were clad with stucco, and they all failed catastrophically. Major water intrusion problems at about the 9-year mark. So it was covered by the builder's warranty. The builder ended up having to tear off all the stucco and re-side everything with stone siding, lumpy stucco, because it's a different product, apparently. And James Hardy on the sides and back. So they did this on every one. I'll come back to that, but that's the product I'm talking about. This is a big sponge on the side of your house. This is not a rain screen like a first barrier. This is just understood to absorb water. People try to keep water out of stucco in all these places, but one of the big problems is that there was no understanding that this is a reservoir cladding. It's a big sponge on the house. Water's going to get in. There's nothing you can do about that. Deal with it. Let the water drain back out. As long as you let the water drain out, and it can drain out, it doesn't stay there, things will probably be okay. I did a fun little video with Sean just the other day to show how much of a sponge this is. Just pour some water to see how much it soaks up. How absorbent these walls are. Stone siding, it's like a big old sponge on the side of your house. I don't know, what is that, Sean, about 8 ounces or so?
Sounds good.
Exactly.
About a cup of water.
I sped it up. You don't need to see the whole thing in a second here. But I pour that whole dang thing on the wall. I get to the bottom of my water. Yeah, that's all come close to the bottom yet. And what, we got about 2/3 of the way down?
Pretty close,
right
yep.
into the wall.
Okay.
Big old sponge. And then just for fun,
This is vinyl siding, just to show how other types of siding are not quite as absorbent. Pour a little bit on here, and already
just for comparison, just a little bit of water on
that water has reached the bottom of the wall and it's dripping out.
Okay, so why do I say it's the same thing as stucco? Because it is, basically. It just has a different shape. What you're looking at here, this is a nice little cutaway they had at Lowe's, so I just took a picture just for this class. You've got your sheathing. In this case, they got plywood, not that anybody uses plywood. Then they have some type of weather-resistant barrier. Here they got tar paper. You got metal lath, scratch-coated mortar. And you don't know what I'm describing so far. I could be describing stucco, could be showing you stone. It's one of the two. Now, if it's stucco, you're going to have the brown coat of stucco and the finished coat of stucco, 2 more layers. And if it's stone, you got you just back butter these things and you stick them on and fill the gaps with mortar. That's about it. And then you cross your fingers. Yes, thank you, George. Yeah, exactly. There's this article here written in the Journal of Light Construction. They have a lot of articles on this. Stick on stone, worse than EIFS. Mark Parley.
Doesn't anybody test this stuff?
Yeah, we do.
These are the results.
This guy out of Iowa, I mean, another article he wrote in the Journal of Light Construction, he finds problems with this all the time. If there's a relocation transaction, Barry, how is it with relocation right now? Is it, I mean, can you buy a relo with a relo company without having a special inspection done?
Well, there's a lot of different relocation companies, but a large number of them just automatically require invasive testing if it's stone veneer or the stucco or EIFS.
Okay.
Some of them just want a visual inspection.
Yeah.
They pretty much want them inspected.
Sure. And they're the ones who have the numbers. They know. They require this because houses fail. So there's this oh, did I lose it here? Yeah. There's a manual by the Adhered Concrete Masonry Veneer Manufacturers Association that says how you're supposed to install this stuff, how you install stone veneer. And they make it really clear how to do it, but I can tell you from experience, these instructions are impossible to follow. Because if they were possible to follow, people would probably do it. I've never seen it done perfect, I don't think. I've seen it done a lot better in the last 2 to 3 years. But just a few illustrations. These are the things that we as home inspectors can see right on the surface to maybe be concerned about. Just some basic checklist stuff. We got a faucet, something coming through the wall that might someday need to be replaced. You don't put the stone, the mortar right up to it. You need to have it embedded and seal it. This is the opposite of that. How are you going to replace that faucet someday? Same thing with the dryer. It needs to be embedded in sealant. What happens when a soccer ball hits this? You got to replace it. You're going to be removing siding. Remember, this is a big sponge on the side of your house. Water needs to drain back out. You need to have it open at the bottom. You need something called a weep screen. When you hear weep screen, we know what a weep screen is. It's a drain. Just replace your mind. You need a drain at the bottom of the wall. That's what we're showing here. You need a 2-inch gap between the bottom of the siding and the roof surface. Water needs to get back out. Remember that first photo I showed you? Townhome community, brand new, lumpy stucco installed everywhere. Here it is. It had already been approved by the city inspector. There's another one. You need a 2-inch gap to hard surfaces, like driveways, patios, decks, things like that. 4-inch gap to soil. There is a little asterisk that the manufacturer started adding in their install instructions. They said if it's a hard surface on cross-protected footings, where it's not going to heave and destroy the siding, the 2 inches isn't quite as important. I think they'll let you have like a 1/2 inch or something like that. But they don't want to get damaged by frosting. That's the opposite of it. You got the siding buried in dirt. It's going to wick water. That's the opposite of that. This is problematic. There's no way for water to drain out. Water will wick up.
And what about salt?
I don't have anything to say about salt. Yeah, it's probably not good for the concrete either. I don't know. I don't think it's good.
Do you say anything about the veneer that is in columns on the porches? Because a lot of them will put it really just for aesthetics. Do you make a big deal out of that?
No, no, I don't. But I mean, when it's wrong, I do note it. But I say, yeah, technically it's supposed to be this. It's just around the column, it's probably okay. Anytime you have a transition between the stone veneer and some other material such as wood trim or vinyl window, whatever it is, you need to leave a big gap between those two materials and then have a foam backer rod shoved in that gap and then caulk to bridge that gap. So the caulk can expand and contract as these materials expand and contract at different rates. The caulk is going to stay sealed to those. This is the opposite of that. This is taking the stone, the mortar, and bringing it right tight to this intersection. Water is going to wick in through capillary action and get that all wet. This is okay. It's not great. It's not a 3/8 inch gap, but they at least left a little bit of a gap. They put a casing bead in there and they caulked this gap. It doesn't look as good, but it is correct. Windows, same thing. You need a 3/8 inch gap, foam backer rod stuffed in there. This is not that. You got the stone going right up to the edge of the window. So these are a few things that you can just see that are blatantly wrong on stone siding installations. I don't see any of these defects happening on new stucco homes today. When I see stucco installed, I don't see a lot of it on new houses, but when I do see new jobs, it all seems to be pretty picture perfect. Now, I talked to Antonio and Barry lately, and they said, oh, I don't know. They're a little more pessimistic than I am, but most of what I see seems to be pretty all right. Stone, can't say the same for stone. Builders have been getting good the last 2 to 3 years, but before that, that's where I got all these photos. I mean, just nasty stuff all over. And when I see exposed, if I see a small section of stone, you got a big overhang, and you got a little bit of stone siding at the front of the house. It all looks pretty well protected. And it's not perfect, but it's probably not going to get wet. I say, yeah, it's not installed right. It's probably not going to be the end of the world. And we kind of leave it at that. When I see all these defects and you've got a big exposed wall, big gable wall, and water hits it all the time, and it's been there for a couple of years, yeah, I'm very quick to recommend invasive moisture testing on a wall like that, especially when I see details like this. So,
Is there any thought process, any difference between stone and brick?
pardon?
You didn't have brick as an exterior.
I don't list brick. I don't have as much to say about it, but I do have a couple examples here. Yeah.
But brick usually has an area.
Brick usually should have a 1 inch area gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't have the same problems and the same type of concerns with brick. Pardon, Dean? Weep holes. Ideally, brick has weep holes. Yep. So that's just some of the stuff that we can see right on the surface that might make us concerned. The most important stuff is the stuff behind all of that, the stuff we can't see. Here's brick. This is a brick-sided house, and I was concerned about this one. Jim, you remember this one, right?
I do remember that house.
Big old house.
Yeah.
This field, I killed this field.
Did they walk that day? It wasn't that day.
Oh, it was before we left. They had decided they weren't playing this house. But I was concerned about a lot of areas, and it's tough to prove it on brick because it's we don't really do the same type of invasive moisture testing on brick. It's typically testing from the inside. But I was concerned about all these windows. I was thinking these windows are probably leaking at these corners, and we poked and prodded in a lot of areas. And I was never able to find anything super definitive at this house. So I ended up using a little trick that Barry taught me. This is one where here, I'll just play the video.
Reuben Saltzman here. I'm taking a quick little video to show what we're gonna show a quick little test I'm going to be doing at this house to kind of back up my recommendation for invasive moisture testing. There's been a lot of places where we're concerned about water intrusion. This is one of them right here. So we're going to go inside, and I'm going to take a moisture reading at the wall. And it's kind of an invasive test, but it's really not. I'll show how that's done. Okay.
This is something I'm happy to do during any home inspection. I love this.
Close by. Just
happen to find an outlet right there. How convenient is that?
Take a little test of the wall sheet. Survey Master, and the Survey Master comes with 6-inch, or maybe it's 5.5-inch probes, maybe 5-inch, I don't know.
Whatever
Not
these
that
are,
long.
this is
These
what
are
it comes
9-inch
with, is these
probes.
short ones.
These are good
But work on a 2x4 wall, not a 2x6 wall. You gotta buy these long ones.
Just touched on my hand now. Sweaty palm.
So you're saying it's important to get on the other side of the box. The outside of the box.
Look at that.
Touching insulation. This is telling me we got wood insulation.
Bingo.
Insulation's all wet, give it a little more shove, hit the
Start with the
sheathing,
wall sheathing.
really wet.
Tell me it's wet. So this is one more thing I'm gonna
Is the carpet jack strip
use
stained at all?
to
No,
justify
there's
my
nothing there at all.
recommendation for
Yep, I
invasive
checked my moisture meter and the tax strips, checked everywhere. The only place I could find any signs of a problem was right there. And that's a test I love doing at these. And I lost my clicker. It's a test I love doing at a house like that where there's no other place to check for water intrusion. You take an outlet cover off, stick those deep wall probes in. And I'm not doing this to tell them you have water intrusion at this one window. I'm doing this to justify my recommendation for invasive moisture testing on the entire house. Here's another fun one. I mean, if you can't see this, this is just, I mean, the drip mark alone should be enough to say, look, you need invasive testing at the wall. This is another house. Oh, wait, there's the front of the house. Here's the detail that really got me concerned, things like this. And then you have a well-placed outlet, you got a drip mark coming out of it, do the same test. Take the outlet cover off.
Heat supply right there too, that should keep it dry.
Yeah, no doubt. It should. My moisture meter reading, 92% there. That is darn wet. This deal fell apart too. Nobody wanted an invasive moisture test.
You're a deal killer, Reuben.
True
You
story.
are.
Yeah. Sometimes I am, and that's okay. So
He has no more feelings.
if you don't have great little, well, never mind. As far as moisture testing, what can be done? There's some company in town here who offers, they'll use a boroscope, this proctologist tool, where they stick it into the wall and they maneuver around to try to find signs of water intrusion. I don't understand this one, because if you have an exterior wall, what's in between your sheathing and the wall? Insulation. You can't maneuver inside an exterior wall with one of these. So even though there's people who say they'll do this, I don't buy it. We've got infrared, and I just say meh. That's not a reliable way of finding water intrusion problems. Back when infrared was kind of new, it was exciting, and the idea was, yeah, we'll use this to find water on stucco houses. I had a contractor just recently, you guys remember who I'm talking about, who said infrared lets you see inside of walls. This is a professional who didn't really know what we did. He was telling us this. Infrared will not see inside of walls. It scans surface temperature. That's it. If the stucco is wet and it's drying, it'll show cooler, but that tells you nothing about the condition of the sheathing behind it. You can't use an infrared camera to find water intrusion on a stucco-clad house. Every once in a while, you can get lucky on wood siding or other materials that will hold a bunch of water, like this one. Happened to just be playing with my infrared camera, saw these big blue patches, took my moisture meter. Yeah, they're wet. Same thing here. Patrick, you remember this one, right? We did this together underneath the deck. Yeah, it's wet, but it was already stained. We would have found this anyways, even if we weren't using an IR camera. And then for moisture testing, there's two ways of doing it. There's invasive from the inside and invasive from the exterior. The interior testing is done with probes that look like this. These things go right into drywall. They just get shoved right through. It's not effective on surfaces that are anything other than drywall. Like what I'm showing here. This is that first stucco house I showed you with those brown stains below the window. That window just could not be tested if I were doing interior testing. Couldn't test this window either. That was another concerning one. And the problem with doing this is where's the most problematic area going to be on a window? it's going to be right at the corners. I'm testing from the inside. What do we have right at the corners? Studs. You've got studs. You can't test the absolute worst areas. You want to be checking the sheathing on the other side. And you want to be checking the other side of the sheathing too. So interior testing can be done if somebody absolutely won't allow invasive testing from the outside. But our preference is always to do invasive testing from the exterior. And here's a quick little video. Here I think this is Wayne. Yeah, Wayne's doing moisture testing on this home. Just to see what, this is a quick little snippet of what it looks like. He's taking a hammer drill, drilling a couple holes.
But after these holes, they get pretty good at lining them up.
Got a pretty good idea, don't you? Takes a hammer probe, pounds
Never
it
have
a
a
little
reading
bit.
of 10 and a
Make
half.
sure that those probes are hitting the sheathing.
As I kind of pound in, I'm trying to set it into the wood a little bit.
Yep.
So we're not getting just a surface reading on the building.
Oh, look, it's all stained. Seems like maybe this is bad news. I was like, oh yeah, this is juicy.
Coming in. That's really what we're doing a lot.
Sticks it probe in,
Basically
nothing.
providing a roadmap to the problems. We're good. Firm. Good news, 9%.
And then take a caulk, stick it in there and fill the holes, squirt it as much as possible to get it all the way back to the sheathing. And hopefully it's going to be a caulk of a matching color. Now when it's stained like that, you know, you're never going to get a perfect match when the stucco's all nasty. But then again, the stucco's all nasty. And this was just a fun one. I think this was the first one I ever went with lean on. You notice below this window, the window looks okay. Window's in decent shape, or at least the stucco is. There's no stains, no nothing. Takes his hammer drill here.
Basically, as soon as I went through the stucco,
You went right through.
yeah, there's nothing there.
Nothing there, man. So that's that on a moisture testing report. That would be no sheathing detected. And then here's what drilled holes looks like. This is what they look like when they're filled. I'm not sure exactly where they are. So somewhere here there's filled holes. That's invasive testing and what it looks like when it's done. Here's a quick little shot of a house. I can't remember who did this one, but you can kind of think about areas that will be problematic. You got a lot of water coming down here, a little bit of a stain here, but really you got this valley, and then a lot more water comes down this way. Of course, we'd be more concerned about this big, nasty brown stain. There's another shot of it. And we test all over. This is your test, Antonio. And then we document it. All of these numbers, 20%. 20% is really the concern area. That's where mold can start going. 16 to 19%, that's cautionary. But 20 and up, that's bad news. These X's, that means no sheathing detected. That's where he drilled and nothing was behind the stucco. It's just, there's nothing left. And this is a page right out of the moisture testing report. On the other side, there really wasn't any big concerns here. That's what the reports look like. This one, I'd be concerned about all of this. All this water comes down, it splashes. You're gonna have a bunch of water coming down here, splashing here, everything splashes here. You got a window, no kick-out flashing. There's things to be concerned about everywhere at this house. No sheathing anywhere.
Is that
No
vinyl?
sheathing. Wood siding. Wood siding.
Did you recommend invasive because of the moisture meter you used on the site?
I didn't do this one.
Oh,
Antonio did moisture testing on this house, and I don't know why he did invasive testing.
They probably knew something was going on.
Might have. A lot of the tests that we do are just for homeowners. This one, I know you remember this one. This is a fun one. That was yours? Okay. Antonio did the moisture testing. Found elevated moisture levels all over the place on the stone. A lot of areas where there was no sheathing detected. The homeowner
There's a builder.
was it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, he had his stucco guy write a long letter explaining how we didn't know what we were doing. And this house is fine. When was our equipment last calibrated? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, that's a great long letter you wrote, but let's just open up a section of the wall and take a look. Let's just do it together. And, we'd like to see it. We're not going to argue. And the owner agreed to open up a 1 foot by 1 foot section and have us out. So I went out there, Antonio went out there, the buyers went out there, the owner was there, the listing agent and the buyer's agent and their assistant. We're all there. And the owner is supposed to have a 1 foot by 1 foot section tested, and they want to see us do the moisture testing as well. So Antonio did the moisture testing. There he is. He's taking a reading, and he can't quite read it. It says 41% on his moisture meter. And here's the section, the one, quote unquote, 1 foot by 1 foot section the owner was supposed to open. You took out one brick, one stone. But look carefully. And and the amount of lath he's got open, it's like you can't see squat. But what you're looking at here, I think we all know this is not sheathing. Those are studs. And we're looking at it with the owner. He's like, see, it's fine. I said, well, what are we looking at? He said, that's the sheathing. And Antonio and I look at each other. We go, no. I mean, it was really uncomfortable. This is wood. This is the stud. That's not sheathing. And Antonio stuck his finger in behind the lath and he pulled out a finger full of sheathing. Okay. I think I just clicked ahead when I was practicing this. I was totally out of time. That's about right. Okay.
What was the conclusion?
The conclusion on this was the sheathing really is gone. You've got major water intrusion. It's very uncomfortable. And we said, can we leave now? And then we left. And I think he ended up having to fix it. So that's what invasive moisture testing consists of.
That was just that spot around the house.
That was just one area.
That house.
Yeah, there was areas all over. So that's what invasive testing is. And I'm going to end it there. I'll answer any questions anybody has, but the big takeaway here is focus on the areas that are going to fail first. If it's stucco and you're doing a home inspection, there's really nothing you can do on the outside to determine if you've had water intrusion. If you have an electrical outlet in a really nice spot, sometimes you can get lucky with a moisture meter and stick it in. If you got deep wall probes, 9-inch probes, you can order them online. They're about $90. Total ripoff, but that's all you can do. Quick question, Brian?
Fiber cement siding?
Fiber cement, I really don't have any info on fiber cement. I've never found major water intrusion on fiber cement siding.
Don't work though, do they?
Pardon?
The scanning tools, do they work through fiber cement?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not so old on houses like 1920 stucco outside. Have you done that?
1920s, older stucco. Is that a problem? Not like new stucco is. You can still have water intrusion problems. We've definitely found it. But you can have water intrusion problems on any house. I don't have the same concerns with those houses that I do new houses. And so that's what you got for stucco. For other types of siding, vinyl, I'm giving you a bunch of different ways. Push, pull, prod, use a moisture meter. It's really easy to find water intrusion on vinyl-sided houses. Really easy to find it on wood-sided houses. And that ends the class. I'll stick around for any questions. Anything else, Barry?
One thing I'll just reinforce regarding invasive testing, we get pushback all the time from real estate agents and homeowners about not wanting invasive testing under stucco because it's going to cause either damage, it's going to cause a moisture problem that wasn't already there, or it's going to look bad. And you saw the picture of one that was caulked. If you didn't know that in the drill, you'd never find it. And there's been no structural engineer, building code official, building scientist, nobody has ever come up with any statement of fact that says moisture testing creates a problem that wasn't there before. So don't let them get away with that. Just call them on it. No, that's not true. That's a myth. We've been testing, we've probably tested 5,000 homes in the Twin Cities by now. And never once has there been a problem created when we moisture tested.
Good point. Bruce.
There's a website called MTI, Masonry Technology Industries, I think. Masonry Technology, whatever. MTI. And they've got some great illustrations for all the things that you're talking about here. How to design a wall. To deal with moisture on stucco, on applied veneers, whether it be brick or man-made brick or man-made stone, or even natural stone over.
Good tip. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? All right, I've got the certificates up here. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.